Right, so I'm joined by Tom from 4-0 Written All Over It. We did this around a month ago now, the end of September. Tom, how you doing, mate? Welcome back to another League One reflection.
Yes, it's not like we've been chatting for a
It's
long
not.
time before you press record, mate. But yes, we're all good. Not going to be enjoying this as much as the previous episode, Jack, I don't think, on a personal level. But I'm sure there are a lot of fans out there that will be looking forward to hearing what you've got to say, and maybe what I've got to say, but probably more like what you've got to say
It's
about
all
the
you, mate.
last
It's all you.
about the last month or so. Let's do it.
Yeah, like you say, in fact, we'll touch on it, and I'm going to throw you a little bit under the bus here because we have spent 40 minutes talking about this episode, and I'm now going to ask him one question we didn't speak about in the 40 minutes preparation. But you spoke
Cool.
about their Portsmouth probably not being the most exciting talking point for you, like it was, and we did this about a month ago. We spoke about a Portsmouth side around, what was it, 4 weeks ago, who were, I think they were second. I think Ipswich were top, but only by a goal. It was really, really tight. We now look back and we now find ourselves in a position where Portsmouth are only just in that top six, fifth place, only 2 points separates themselves from seventh, currently Derby County. For you, I mean, I've actually watched two Portsmouth games this month. I watched the game against Oxford. I was in the game, not in the game. I didn't play. I was at the game in the away end at Portsmouth. I might as well have been. I've been better than a few of the players that were playing on the day in a blue shirt. Or was it? They weren't blue, were they? They were a very blue shirt. Was it? It was your
mint
your
blue,
mint blue shirt. What has changed for you? Because I look at it now, and I know it's quite a big answer and I'm not expecting a huge essay on it. But what has changed for you? Because there is a change, and the big one being the league position.
Yeah, we're chatting all about October, aren't we? Although it's the 5th of November as we're recording this. I'm assuming this is going to be out midweek next week, some point.
Yeah. Try and get it out Tuesday, Wednesday.
Okay, cool. So we're only a couple of days into November. But yeah, one win in 6 in the league in October for Pompey says it all, really. And that, would you believe, it was away to Forest Green 1-0, which, with no disrespect to Forest Green, is a game that a lot of teams will win this season, although there will be some surprise results. I know Bolton had that one, didn't they? That I'm sure we'll come on to. Not an easy place to go by any stretch of the imagination, but a place where you'd expect your Portsmouth, Ipswich, Plymouth, Sheffield Wednesday, other teams in this division to go there and do the job, as many of them have done already this season. We've got a really big injury list at the minute, and that cannot be the sole reason why the form has dropped. I personally believe that it is one of the major reasons. We saw last night at the time of recording that Tom Lowry came back into the fold again in the FA Cup game against Hereford that we played away from home yesterday evening. Many people who are watching this might have watched the game. It was on the BBC, so you may or may not have seen it. But he came on and we instantly started scoring goals from open play and set pieces again. Now, whether that is, there's sort of things to draw into it, because it's not League One, it's FA Cup. And with respect to Hereford, they are 3 leagues below us in League One. But at the same time, it was clear to see that the impact that one individual that is really key to the setup at the minute, Tom Lowry, for us, can have on the team. And it gives you that impetus and the confidence and the kind of it is massively based on confidence, but at the same time, it kind of maybe shakes us a little bit and go, oh yeah, these are the levels we were hitting earlier on in the season with him in the side. Why have we fallen so far below what we've been doing? Another one of those is Marlon Pack. So what Danny's been saying over the last couple of days, and always take what Danny Cowley says with regards to injuries as with a bit of a pinch of salt, because it's never completely night and day with what he says. Quite rightfully, to kind of stifle opposition, whatever. There's reasons behind what he says and does, and as fans, I think by and large Pompey fans respect that. Marlon Pack is likely to be back for our next league outing away to Morecambe, which is really good news. So thing is, Jack, if we can have Marlon Pack and Tom Lowry back in the centre of midfield, I don't need to tell you this, but that is almost the setup, bar 1 or 2, that Pompey started the season off with. Sort of, I don't know if it was like 8 wins from 10 or something ridiculous like that. Really came at the blocks. It might not have been 8 wins from 10, but it was definitely a very high win percentage of our first opening league games. And since those injuries, the wheels have fallen off. I say the wheels have fallen off. A dip in form has occurred, and we're kind of sat here at this moment in time trying to scurry around for the reasons as to why that's happened. You literally look at the absence of personnel. We're currently playing our 4th and 5th midfield pairing in Ryan Tunnicliffe and Jay Mingy. So Tom Lowry, Marlon Pack, Joe Morrell, and Louis Thompson all out injured until Friday night. That is my major reason. That in answer to your question, that is why it's all dropped a little bit for Pompey at the minute.
Full faith in Danny Cowley?
Absolutely, yeah. No question at all. I actually think, and we said this on the live that you were on after we discussed the Oxford game, that kind of came up. The question that, yes, there's been a dip in form, and there's always, especially in the modern game, there's always calls for, there'll always be people who don't like Danny Cowley out there, and that's absolutely fine. You're more than welcome to your football opinion. That's why we love football so much, is that you can formulate such a wide, broad range of view on it. But for me, Danny Cowley is the man for Portsmouth Football Club, and I wouldn't even judge what happens the end of this season on whether Danny Cowley should stay or not. I think he's very much long-term. I think that's what the owners see, and I think that's what the personnel at the football club see. He's bought into the project. He gets the place. He gets the fans. Yes, there's going to be one or two horrendous results along the way, and you were there to witness it against Charlton. You're not going to be 100% on your mettle all season. Injuries are going to come and go, but you just got to remain committed to the overall vision with Danny at the helm, and I think that's what we'll do.
Yeah, and I think so. You should. I think there is a process, there is a project there, and I don't know the length of his contract. I think he's still got a good couple of years. Is that right?
Long term.
So there isn't a time on it. Okay. Well, I think either way, I think long term is, I'd sort of go 3 years here or there, wouldn't you? And I think that for me is enough for Portsmouth to sort of see a really sort of long term ambition and process under his reign. And that is the most important thing. I think someone like you who really does support him. So, and the many others as well. It's not just you that support Danny Cowley. There's a lot of Portsmouth fans, but there are a couple, like you said, there's a handful that maybe don't think he's the right man. And again, that question does have to be asked, whether you like it or not.
And they're always the most vocal as well, Jack, by the way, the ones that don't support him. So I think
I'm going to be careful what I say, because at the moment, obviously, Oxford United, they've got their own issues with their manager. And we're going to end up speaking about this for way too long. But one last question on it, and this is not really dedicated to Portsmouth. It's actually a bit of my own mind. But would you say that, can you go back on a decision? Because I think there's a few things, and you're going to laugh. I'm not going back on my decision right now, because that game against Fleetwood wasn't good enough, and I'm not going to be a flip flop. But I'm interested to sort of see, in a Portsmouth perspective, these fans that maybe don't think Danny Cowley's the right man, and injuries, and then they come back, those players come back, and you skyrocket up again. Hypothetical. How do you sort of change is there a way of changing your tune? And do you think they will change their tune? Or do you reckon it is the case of, right, I don't really rate him, and I'm going to say like that, and I'm going to stay quite stubborn throughout this entire process?
There's a few stubborn ones, but by and large, everyone goes very quiet when the team are going really well. And that's not just a Pompey thing, by the way. That's to any club that you support up and down in League One, or indeed any other football club in this country or around the world, will know that when things are going well, people don't tend to call for the manager's head, and it's very rarely that managers walk or get the sack when things are going well. There's been a few instances in the past where you're like, oh, crikey, where did that come from? But it always comes on a dip, doesn't it? You look at Steven Gerrard in the last couple of weeks at Villa, like that was as a result of some really turgid football for weeks and weeks. So yeah, I think they do go very quiet, and it was very quiet up until very recently. The only really started to make themselves known when we're talking about them as if they're kind of this horrible group of people, which they're absolutely not. They're more than entitled to say what they want to say, and yeah, exactly, it is their opinion, and I'm sure there's going to be people in the comment section down below that will disagree with something that you or I say over the next whatever.
There always is, and that's amazing. That's the point of the conversation.
There always is. Yeah, and we wouldn't be doing it if there wasn't. If everyone was just going to go, yes, Jack and Tom, yes, you're absolutely right, then there'd be no point in doing the videos, would there? So, and that's the way I always see it, just to provide a bit of opinion, and that's all people are doing when they voice their concerns about the manager. The people will also sit there and go, oh well, Tom, you were sat in his office, you've spoken to him, you know him quite well.
And I think that is a fair point, and I would say that. And,
yes.
and I'll say
bring that up. It's important.
And I will say and I'll say this to you when we're not recording. I think that there is a part of that, and I haven't had I want to speak to Carl Robinson. I think that'd be a really, really interesting interview. And have I blown my chances of that interview? Maybe. But no, because I've always, when I've said it, and we've gone down we've got so much to cover. We've got Club of the Month, Biggest Underachievers, Surprise Package, Player of the Month, and we will all get to that, I promise you. But this is a really interesting conversation. Or I think it is. And I think Tom's trying to think it is, and you might not. And that's the whole point of it. But the where I'm trying to go with this
on if you don't. Skip on a bit.
Give about 20 seconds or so. I was going to say, I think Carl Robinson, I think that's a whole nother conversation. And I've never, when you asked me the question, we did Sunday Live, I've done it 3 weeks in a row or something, and you said your first question was, do you think he should be sacked? And I think I just said, yes, I do think he probably should go. But I've never, and And the reason why I would stand by that now, and that's not because I don't think he's a good manager, because he's proven that. I think the football hasn't been very good. And if there's any sort of consolation, is you did ask me that question before we beat Bolton and got a point against you. So that there is a little bit there. But I understand you can't flip flop. I can't say I want him gone this week and don't want him gone next week, because I don't really think how it should work, and everyone's entitled to their opinion. Some people might be like that. I personally don't, and there is a time for that to change, if the players, because we've had injuries as well, and maybe we regain that type of form that we had last season that proved quite successful, then maybe there could be a change. I just feel still right now, he's a bit bitey in interviews. He's not the same Carl Robinson that we've seen. And that's probably why I'm still swaying towards the fact that I don't know whether or not it is right for him. But if he turns it around, please prove me wrong. If there's like a spectrum. Yeah.
Can I ask you a question? Something that Ben said to me the other day, he doesn't think there's anyone better than Carl Robinson for Oxford United right now out there on the market. 250 games in. What would you say to that? Is there someone that you're thinking, right, we've got our eye on him, let's get him in, and he's going to do a better job?
There isn't. And that's the thing, there isn't. And the reason why and there's some people that are so vocal on Twitter, and I've never said on Twitter, I think I might have said it right after the game on Instagram, Carl Robinson should be sacked. But even in the video that I did after, I said it probably should be time for him to go. The only time I've said straight up in front of everyone, I think he should be sacked, is when you asked me the question. So it's actually your fault.
Sorry.
You maybe crumble completely. Yeah. No. But there isn't. And I think Ben makes a good point. I think right now there isn't a standout candidate. I think the only candidate will probably be, and it's not an attractive one really, and that's only because he's lacks an experience, is John Messina. You might know that. You probably do know that. He's been at Oxford United for a long time. He's technically our club captain. Doesn't play very much because of his age now. He's doing his coaching badges. He's sort of been player coach for about 2 seasons. That would probably the candidate. He definitely would take under the interim role if Carl Robinson would be to go. But I don't know. It probably is right. The only reason why it's just not the same at Oxford, and that's the problem we find ourselves in right now. It doesn't feel the same, and Carl Robinson doesn't come across the same enthusiastic. Now, you watched the interview, and we spoke about it after the Portsmouth game. We got a point at Fratton Park, and we're not going to get onto the game because I got rinsed on Friday Sunday Live, and you can watch that live. Honestly, it was like I managed the team. I walked away as like people, I honestly, I love a debate, and I actually really enjoyed it. But it was like, you set your team up to play like that. I was like, I was not in the dressing room. I was in London watching it on my laptop. It was simply not my fault. And also, I'm going to take this opportunity as well to say, I wish I had said this in the conversation that we had. It was a conversation, slightly heated conversation that we had, not between me and you, actually. It was between the other people on the show. But I was sort of saying the only reason, it actually should be taken as a compliment to you, the fact that we had to turn to those antics to try and get stuff from the game. It's like we could have our own we could have had our own episode actually dissecting that debate, like it made its own podcast. We probably could do that in the future, just watching that back. But
reaction,
honestly, we should react to that, because one thing I wish I'd said was, and if you let me, you don't copyright and claim a copyright, I might play it now. Play each other, and they do provide sort of good games of football and battles. They don't provide great games of football in terms of, I wouldn't, it's not a great advert. I think that's a fair response. I wouldn't say that we play some of the worst football in League One. I think that's unfair. I think we play some of the best football, not this season, but we have done. We've been top of expected goals for the last 2 seasons. We scored the most goals in League One for the last 2 seasons, or certainly up there in the top 3, 100%. In terms of Carl Robinson and him being an awful manager, look, I've been very open about my thoughts on this show. This season, we haven't been getting results. It's a results-based business, and Carl Robinson is the manager, and ultimately it comes down to him. This season, we haven't been good enough, and also how incredible, in a week that things can change. We pick up 4 points from 6 against Bolton away, and by the way, I doubt anyone else has watched the game yesterday against Bolton Wanderers. I thought we were spectacular. We played really good football, and we went to one of the difficult grounds in League One, who have expectations to be in that top 6, and I think a batting with you, and we went there and won 3-1. So. And I haven't seen any tweets yet about time wasting in that game, but I'll be refreshing that as well. But I don't think we've seen any tweets about time wasted. I wouldn't take it away from the fact that there was time wasting in that game against Portsmouth. But again, it's football. Wycombe are 10 times worse, as an example. And when you try and go to a ground and you've got to get a result, and we're in a rut, and let's try and get out of it, and you've got to almost play the dark arts, and we did that well.
I think you're more than entitled to do exactly what you've done, Jack. Much to the annoyance of us all on the panel, and I want to thank you for being such a great sport and providing the response on that, because it's not easy to come onto a to a Pompey stream and go and sit here and get hounded like that. But I do really appreciate you coming on, and I should say.
Tom, I wasn't hounding it. All I was saying is basically what everyone's been saying, and other people that are not on here wanted to say. But however, I will give him credit. He's come back with some decent answers and some decent stuff. And we have had some brilliant games against Oxford in the past, and we've had some great. But when they turn to tactics like that, and as I said, they're not the only team that goes to Fratton Park and plays stupid football like that, because it's not football, is it? I mean, it's not what we like as a football at Fratton Park. Well, I've never seen us do anything like that at all. Perhaps we have. Perhaps I've been asleep. I don't know, but I don't think we have.
Maybe that's just in League One, though, because ultimately you look at the sides that got out of League One. You have got to play. I think, unfortunately, the world we live in, and I'm not backing out whatsoever, in the football world we live in, I think you have got to play with a bit of a nasty side, a bit that people don't like. You look at the sides that have got
I understand that.
I look at Rotherham. Yeah. These are sides, and look at Rotherham last season. I look at Wigan. These are sides that will go to these grounds, and they're going to give something a little bit different, and not going to play attractive stuff. And maybe that is the reason why yourself, Charlton, these sides as well, think that you can come down to League One, play some really, really sexy stuff, and get straight back up. Unfortunately, I think the football and now League One, I don't think it's as easy as that. I really, really don't. I think there's more to the game than that, and whether you like it or not.
I don't think I like it. I think that's the thing.
I don't like it either, but I'm just saying that is, I think, a way that I think that unfortunately is an aspect that has us and get out of League One.
I feel like
you're right. You are spot on. You are spot on with that.
I feel like I was David Jones sat between Roy Keane and Gary Neville and Jamie Carragher at one.
And one thing I wish I had said was we actually had to turn to those sort of like time-wasting dark arts simply because we understood the quality of you. We were down to 10 men and we were at Fratton Park in a bad run of form. That's I wish I'd said that, but I didn't.
Well, I did my very best to try and level things and smooth them out as we always like to do. And I actually think there's absolutely nothing wrong with doing what you've done, because pretty much every team that is not a challenging for promotion side, I know Oxford want to be challenging for promotion and want to be up there back with the playoffs, but fortunately, things aren't that way at the moment. Who knows what might happen coming into the season? They're all more than entitled to do so. And teams will do it at Portman Road. Teams will do it at the Valley. Teams will do it at Hillsborough. Teams will do it at Fratton Park. Teams will try and do it at Home Park, but will just get beaten. And I think that's the problem for Pompey fans, is that they're so frustrated that we can't then counteract what teams try to do to us. So take a good example of this, right? And this will feed into the conversation about October. I'll make it very brief because I know we've got to crack on. But Shrewsbury last week had 2 away games. Tuesday night at Home Park, Plymouth Argyle. And then on the Saturday, they went to Fratton Park, Pompey. They were winning 1-0 at Home Park for a long period of the game. Don't know how long it was for, but it was probably 3/4 of the game, maybe 2/3 of the game. Final score is 2-1 Plymouth, right? Shrewsbury come to Fratton Park. They're leading 1-0 for a large period of the game. Final score is 1-1. Those are the two. That's the dichotomy between the two, is that teams that go to Home Park, and it's probably happened at Portman Road. I know they've had a few unlucky results there this season. I recognise the Lincoln one that's happened recently and whatever, but it's teams that are like Plymouth Argyle that can actually inhibit what you try and impose on them, whereas Pompey can't. And I think that is probably contributed to quite a lot of the we'll call it the outburst that was heading your way, that we've just seen a little clip of.
So I think we'll finally move on to what is meant to be the episode of sort of reflecting on October. I think it is a really interesting conversation there, and there's bits in there that, again, you might find interesting, you might find relevant. There's bits you inevitably won't, but I think it all does link into what's been a really hectic October for both of our clubs. I think Oxford have had a really busy one, some positives. I think we've actually had a more positive October than we did September, and that says quite a lot. And we're still talking about Carl Robinson, but that's because we had such a bad start to the season and we're still only 17th. As for Portsmouth, it's interesting as well. You're 5th in the league and we're still talking about Danny Cowley potentially, not future. We're talking about people not maybe being completely on board what's going on there and you not being as happy as you were. You're still in the top 6. And if I asked you at the start of the season, I think we did one the end of last year, and definitely we speak so much in lots of different channels at the moment, but we always talk about the expectations of Portsmouth. You would say, can we be at least in the top six? I think he has said that before. Be in the top six at a minimum, and that's where we want to be. If we can push into the top two, that'd be an added bonus. But certainly, can we get into the top six? And you are in there still, so there is that. But I understand the run of form at the moment wouldn't suggest that it's a comfortable position essentially. Anyway, let's get on to the club of the month, because I'm trying to remember. I definitely should have done better work on comparing who won it last time, so I can sort of compare. I think I said Ipswich last time. No, I said Portsmouth. You said Ipswich. Neither of those are my picks this time. I went with Plymouth Argyle, currently top of the table, playing some really good football. 41 points. Second has 37 points. That's Ipswich. They have a 4-point gap between themselves. Both played the same amount of games. They're in a really, really good position. Just won the Devonshire Derby 4-2. Like you say, you spoke about Shrewsbury a second ago. They're finding difficult moments in the game, managing to get through them and grabbing the 3 points and running away with it. I've recorded an episode today looking at a website called The Analyst, sort of looking at the XG and looking at all these different statistical sides of it. And Plymouth for goals for, slightly different for goals against. They are a side that at the moment their output is really proving quite pivotal for them. You can't argue that the style of play, their goal scorer ability, and their league position is really quite exciting. So for me, my club of the month will be Plymouth. Tom, who have you gone with?
I was massively in agreement with you for that, actually, Jack. Yeah. And we had a little run through of what we were going to go for. I think this is the only one where we're completely tied on it.
Yeah.
I would just absolutely echo all that you just said. Just to build on a couple of things, is that you're right about the challenging moments in games. And I think Plymouth Argyle are one of maybe 2 or 3 sides in this division that have shown so far that they can do this and have perfected this skill, albeit it's not absolutely every game. They have lost a few so far this season. I think they've only lost 2, which is actually the same as Pompey and Ipswich have at this time of recording. Although, would you believe this? Plymouth have won 13 and we've only won 6 or 7. So they've nearly won twice as many games as us in League One this season. And that's the difference between first, second and fifth, sixth, isn't it? But specifically on Plymouth, the way in which they can take a 15-minute period of a game and completely turn it on its head is remarkable, and it's gonna and it already has, and it's going to continue to win them a lot of football matches. They did it at Fratton Park. It was I think we were quite comfortably at a 1-0 win. It's never comfortable when it's 1-0 in League One. We know that, and especially against a team like Plymouth. But it could have been maybe 2 or 3, and I don't think any Plymouth fans will disagree with me on that one, particularly first half. And then Sean Raggett nods one into his own net, and all of a sudden, bang! That's it. Momentum literally shifts, and within 10 minutes, they're 2-1 up, and we're chasing the game. So it's one of those where you're just, the game actually ended 2-2, and it's one of the only occasions where, other than their losses away from home and then their draw to play Bristol Rovers away from home, it's one of the only occasions they've actually dropped points on the road this season is at Fratton Park, and it was maybe a little bit ominous, but it was an equaliser that we were really pleased we got, and a point that we managed to salvage, which we probably deserved. They did it against Exeter. You mentioned the Devon Derby there. I mean, Exeter were bossing the game, I thought, for large periods. I thought they were, especially when they were ahead and in front. I thought they had real control of that game, and that's one of the first sides we've seen go to home park this season and actually take a game by the proverbial balls and just run with it.
Maybe that's the way that some sides, because I think we mentioned it earlier when we talked about time wasting. I mean, some sides, I think Oxford have done it this season at home park. We tried to go there and play really quite tedious, sort of quite, it's not great football really, tedious football. Try and maybe bring it into a physical battle, try and make it as scrappy as you can, try and maybe carve out a couple of chances on the break, understand they're going to have the ball, try and sit back. But it's so dangerous because they've got the players like Ballymumba, Morgan Whittaker, Azaz, now Cosgrove they've got as well, Hardy. I keep going on. These are players that honestly could, like you say, click of a finger, shift the momentum. Right, we're going to go at you now, and we're going to expose you in so many different ways. And a game can be won and lost in that split second. And what Exeter, and you're spot on, what Exeter tried to do was, right, we're not going to be afraid to, maybe we won't have all the ball a lot of the time, but we are going to try and dominate the ball at the times. We're going to try and create a couple of chances at quite difficult moments where sometimes we drop off and sit back a couple of yards. Exeter went, right, we're going to try and push higher up, higher line. And like you say, for moments it did work, but I think quality told. I think the individual quality told. When they had those moments, Plymouth, Ballymumba's goal, that absolute strike from outside the box, moments like that, that's just quality, isn't it? That's just player quality, just a really big moment in the game.
still a good finishes, couple of good finishes from Exeter, by the way, as well, which
Yeah,
is a mention. Really, really impressed with them, and we're going to mention Exeter again in this show later on. But yeah, I mean that again, just very quickly, was a fantastic advert and a brilliant way to represent League One on the telly. And there's a lot of people that wouldn't normally watch Plymouth Exeter, but the fact that they put it on the Monday and it was quite kind of well exposed to everyone, I think it got a really good
main event when it on Sky Sports. I mean, that's
exactly. And I think a lot of people that wouldn't have seen it otherwise were actually really taken aback by what they saw. And yes, it's a Devon derby that hasn't happened for a long time, and there's a lot riding on it. And I think that maybe feeds into why Exeter played in the way that you described them, because they've got to be up for it, because it's the big game.
New manager as well, of course. So they got
exactly.
There is an aspect to it.
Exactly, and that's not to detract from the really good season they've had. But yeah, great advert for League One, that one.
We're talking about an October reflection. Plymouth haven't lost a game in October, so I think that says quite a lot.
Yeah.
Who's underwhelmed you sort of in the past month? I went last time, so you can start. I've got a couple of options, but far away. Who have you gone with? There's a couple, unfortunately. This isn't a nice award you want to win for an October reflection, but who would you go with, Tom?
No, it's not a nice one. My handful are probably Barnsley. Is one that I'd pick out. They've obviously fallen on tough times at the minute. I know that the last one was a win, but they have had a really dodgy run of form. I mean, we can probably gloss over this one quite quickly because we spent quite a lot of time talking about us at the start of the episode. But I was going to give it to Pompey, and not the fact that kind of surprisingly underwhelmed, but just actually to be expected with the injuries that we were hit with. And the annoying thing and the disappointing thing is that it wasn't actually, with respect to all sides in League One, a particularly tough run of games that we had. Yes, in October we've played Ipswich and Charlton away from home on both occasions, and you think, yeah, they're two really tough games. But the rest of them, and this is no disrespect to you, but Forest Green, Oxford, Shrewsbury, teams that you would in an ideal world want to be beating. So it's one of those. I'm giving it to Pompey, and I'm hoping that's the only time this season, if we end up doing these on a monthly basis, that I end up giving it to Pompey. Who are your picks, mate, for this what award that you don't want to receive?
Yeah, it's not a nice award, is it? It's the one where you don't want to stand up in front of everyone and claim it. But I've gone Cambridge, and it hurts to say. And if you watch September reflection, you'll know why. Me and Mark Bonner, we get along.
He nearly went, didn't he? He
nearly went, and unfortunately, and he was going to go Rotherham as well, which means all content around Mark Bonner would have to go. But unfortunately, I say fortunately, he's staying. But unfortunately for him, and all jokes aside for Cambridge, it did start really, really well. And I made a stupid prediction to say they couldn't be climbing into that top 10, posing a potential shout for something a little bit higher. I mean, they're now 18th, and that's how quickly things can change. 17 games played, 19 points, minus 11 goal difference. Sorry. They went on a pretty horrible run, beaten by Derby, beaten by Ipswich, which isn't a nice sort of two fixtures back to back, but 2-0 and 3-0. Rovers will be a disappointing defeat, really, you'd say. They're sort of in and around that area together. They should have done it, and that's annoying for them. And Sheffield Wednesday. So you look at that block of 5: Derby, Ipswich, and Sheffield Wednesday, and Rovers, and then after that Port Vale. They lost all of those games. They went on a 5 loss streak on the trot, which isn't very pretty. They did get something from the Wycombe game quite recently. They won that game 3-2, which is a really good win, and then got another defeat against Peterborough United the weekend after that. So yeah, it's not looking pretty, unfortunately, at the moment. And I think Mark Bonner has got to try and find a different way of trying to get results with this side, because there is quality in that side. But again, they started with a lot of promise. They were sort of a real sort of difficult side that was sort of banana skin side, I used to call them. At the moment, they are sort of becoming that sort of team in and around sort of 15th to sort of 20th that you sort of want to play at the moment in a bad run and expect to get a win, which isn't really what Mark Bonner and what Cambridge fans want. But yeah, I'd go with them. I'd have to, unfortunately, also say Accrington as well, which does surprise me a little bit, because I think John Coleman's a really good manager and so experienced at this level. But similar to Cambridge, I think it's a 5-game loss. It might have been a little bit longer than that, but it's at least 5 games on the trot which they lost, in a row, which isn't good at all. Only just outside that bottom 4, 17 points in total from 17 games. They're averaging a point every single game. It's not a great record, and that probably just about, will that keep you in the league? Not really. I think that probably wouldn't keep you in the league, would it? It'd be close if it would.
Not with how good it is at the minute as well. I think you'd struggle, definitely.
So if you're averaging a point per game, that would give you a points tally come the end of the season that, like you say, only make it very tight. It wouldn't be a comfortable experience.
normally it's about 40 points, isn't it? You need, I think, in a standard League One season, or it has been the case in the last couple of years. So maybe out of a 46 game season, if you're averaging a point per game, you might just about be all right. But as we say, it's so many results have been plucked from thin air at the moment that you're just like, you need to be as on your mettle as you can be. And I'm hoping, Jack, that this bad run of form continues for the next month or so, because we're off to Accrington on the weekend of the 10th of December, and I've booked everything for it with a couple of mates of mine. So I really don't want to be going there disappointed. I think just quickly on Accrington, they are a kind of team that at the minute Cambridge are doing, which they don't want to be doing, but Accrington will be having runs of 5 games where they lose, and then they'll have a draw and a win, and then another 5-game losing streak, and then another couple of draws and wins, and then another 5-game losing streak, and that will be their season. It might not be. I might be completely wrong, but that's the kind of season that I see them having, which their fans aren't going to want. But when the wins come,
will keep them in the league, won't it? Probably.
Yeah, when the wins come, there'll be good wins, and it will keep them there. So
Yeah, it's not a nice one to give out, but I think that's pretty fair. Cambridge, Accrington, and you said Barnsley. You touched on Pompey as well. So a couple of shouts there. Final ones, I'd probably have to go Cambridge, just based off the fact that we've spoke about Cambridge quite positively at the start. Sorry, start of the reflection, but the other month or so ago, and obviously Pompey as well. Things have changed quite really for both of those clubs. Right, let's move over to surprise package of the club. We'll try and whiz through these a little bit quicker than we have done. It's not easy. There's so much conversation. I'll start with my ones. I'd probably go Port Vale. I think Lincoln City deserve a shout. I think they've been really good. They beat Ipswich as well this season, which is not an easy place to go. They've got some really, really good results. Unfortunately for Ipswich, they sort of find themselves in a position where they're winning the games against Ipswich. They've got a draw against Sheffield Wednesday, beat Barnsley, and then they go and lose to Port Vale. So, that's annoying. You can beat the teams above you, but can't quite get results against the side around you. And that, for me, is going to be a little bit of a letdown potentially on their behalf. But I'd have to give Lincoln City a lot of credit. Port Vale as well, a side that a lot of people did go straight back down. They're sort of really, really comfortable in that mid-table, currently 10th in the league, 23 points from 17 games is really quite impressive. They're sort of finding a way of, similar to Cheltenham and Cambridge last season, actually coming into the league and causing problems, maybe a little bit underestimated by opposition. And who have you gone with? There's one more shout. I think you probably are going to touch on it.
Yeah, mine was going to be Bristol Rovers. I mean, you look at their results, particularly in the league, Jack, they've only lost once in October. Well, they only did lose once in October, and that was away at Pride Park, which is not exactly an easy place to go and win a game of football, is it? And I think they actually did semi-well in that game in periods too. So you're just looking at that and you're thinking that they haven't had easy fixtures either. Like you're looking, they went away to Exeter and got a point. They've had Cheltenham away, MK Dons away. They've obviously played Cambridge. And then crucially, draws against both Plymouth and Sheffield Wednesday in the league in October.
Big points there.
Yeah, it's big points. And that is remarkable from Bristol Rovers. And that is why I think they are definitely a shout for, I suppose, surprise package, but maybe just a really brilliant month for them and a really great cluster of games. Because when we played them a couple of months ago, and I know we had this conversation, they were really falling on pretty hard times. They'd cut a couple of bad losses. They'd come off a 3-0 defeat to Barnsley before they came to Fratton Park and lost 3-1. Then they went to Portman Road and lost 2-0, and then they had a really bad loss, a 6-3 loss to Lincoln City. And then they lost to Accrington. And then just all of a sudden, October comes along and they have a really good couple of weeks. So
and it's so tight as well. You spoke about it. They're on 20 points. They're actually 16th. Would you go surprise package and they're still 16th? What's happened there? 20 points. Bolton on 27 points, and they're in 6th. That's how that's how close it is. A couple more wins, you're looking at top 10, 1 or 2 more. Dare I say it? You're looking at a top 6 place, and that's how tight and how close it is. And I'm sort of say that because Oxford got 19 points, so it makes me feel better. So let's move over then to manager of the month. We spoke about Plymouth at the start of the episode, so no surprises with who I've gone with. I've gone with Argyle manager Stephen Schumacher. I think the league position of Plymouth, I don't want to go too much into detail about it because I will be repeating what I said about Plymouth when I did give them club of the month. But I think, he's got a side there playing some really good stuff. He's got some really, really good players and he's getting the best out of those players as well. Like I say, look at the likes of Morgan Whittaker on loan from Swansea. As he's got on loan, he's getting the best out of those young players. Ballymumba on loan from Norwich. Ryan Hardy, who of course is a Plymouth Argyle player. He's continuing to score goals. Yeah, he's got something quite good going on at Plymouth, and all you got to do is look at the league table to sort of really see that. So I've gone with Stephen Schumacher. Certainly deserves credit, and Tom, who have you gone with for manager of the month, mate?
I was going to agree with you massively on Schumi being at the wheel at Home Park and at any away game that Plymouth go to. And by way of not wanting to say the same one as you and wanting to, maybe even give a bit more credit to another manager, I thought Grant McCann deserves a bit of a mention just for the way in which Peterborough have conducted themselves so far in the month of October. I keep forgetting that we're not in October anymore, but yeah, I mean they've only lost one in the whole month of October away to Wycombe Wanderers at Adams Park. The rest of those, by and large, have all been wins, bar a 1-1 draw against Burton Albion. The rest of them in the league are wins, so that's fantastic. Yeah. So they've gone to MK Dons and won. They've beaten Forest Green at home. Went to your place, obviously, as you know, and then they had Cambridge at their place, and then Accrington too the Tuesday night before that. So they've really cobbled together some really good stuff. The only thing I would say, and perhaps the reason why he might be a second to Stephen Schumacher, is they're not keeping very many clean sheets, Borough, at the moment. They're goals on both sides of the fence in pretty much every game in October, bar that Cambridge United one where Cambridge didn't score a goal. But other than that, it's a 3-1 Accrington, 2-1 against Oxford, the 3-1 loss to Wycombe, of course, 4-1 still conceded against Forest Green, 1-0 with Burton, and then 3-2 win against MK Dons. So yeah, there's a lot of goals going in again at Peterborough, but again the wins, and that's absolutely all that matters.
The fourth in the league, he's doing a good job.
Can't argue with it. That was if I was being picky, by the way. But fantastic job.
I'm sure there'll be some Ipswich fans who go as well. Where's Kieran McKenna shout? He's doing well as well. Don't worry. Right. Let's go to player of the month, because I understand Ipswich fans, they get quite protective about their Kieran McKenna. And he's doing a very good job. It's just that, unfortunately, Stephen Schumacher's doing better. Okay. Right. Let's do. I think he is. I think that's quite a fair assessment. I think you look at the league position, he probably is. But McKenna, all jokes aside, he's doing a good job. Don't worry. We haven't forgotten about you, Kieran. Right, let's go to player of the month, because there's been some really good individuals. Speak about some managerial individuals. Let's speak about some players, because they are the people that are providing the entertainment this month. I've got a few here. We've got three, but we've sort of shared the options. Barry Bannon has been in exceptional form this month. I mean, I looked at SofaScore. He's been in, I want to say, out of the 4 or 5 team of the week, I believe he's been in at least 3. He might have been into all 4 of the month, because obviously they do it in rounds and it all gets a little bit confusing. But either way, he's been in the majority of the team of the weeks on SofaScore when it comes to average ratings. And some people aren't massive fans of looking at goal contributions and if that warrants to be the best player. But I think it is a fair assessment. Barry Bannon's had a really, really good time during the month of October. He scored a lot of goals, with some very important goals as well.
Some screamers.
Absolute corkers, yeah. Like I say, he's currently the highest average rating as well at 7.86 across the season, and the month of October certainly has helped him do that. He got into the round 17 team of the week. I'm going to go for it live as well. You can see round of 16. He got in there. Did he get in round 15? Yes, he did. That's 3. 14. He didn't get in 14. 13, and he's back in it. So look, he's done very, very well. 9.4 rating on round 13, and he's absolutely bossing the show for Sheffield Wednesday. Key part of their midfield in that number 10 role. Can play a little bit deeper, but he's an absolute maestro, a magician in League One. Certainly a big reason why they are having a good season, as we expect them to have. I'd also go with Morgan Whittaker at Plymouth as well. Somebody's been a regular appearance in these sort of team of the weeks, but I don't want to sort of look too much into that. Let's just look on the eye. Morgan Whittaker's done very good. He was fantastic against Exeter as well, as was Barry Bannon on the eye in the games. He didn't play the Derbyshire Derby, but on the eye he did have of course a very, very good month just by watching him play. He's a sublime footballer, and same with Morgan Whittaker as well. He's a striker that can play a little bit deeper as well. He's sort of playing as that number 10, sort of shadow striker behind Cosgrove or Hardy, ever sort of plays as that sort of real focal point at Plymouth. He's quite tall, he's quite physical, he's very, very quick as well, and the strike on the lad is really impressive, and I think a massive reason to why someone like Stephen Schumacher's clear our manager of the month, and why Plymouth are our club of the month. He's at the heart of that. So he's been very, very impressive. Another striker, another attacker. Tom, who have you gone with?
Well, just to quickly build on what you said about Morgan Whittaker, I think you can put him in the same boat as Barry Bannon in terms of scoring important goals. Now, he's scored some screamers, Morgan Whittaker, but he's also scored some really influential ones at the same time as being screamers. So that's a massive plus point. For me, it's the other end of Devon as a kind of one that we should all be really impressed with, and that is Stansfield. I think he's been superb. I think the story is so fantastic, and it's such a
Wonderful
poignant
story.
one. It's such a great story. And I think he's massively doing his dad proud. And I think it's just that kind of the family and football crossover is so special sometimes. And I just think it's great. And his football speaks for himself, but to have the backstory behind it as well is just phenomenal. I wanted to do another. I realize we're kind of switching between Plymouth and Exeter, and the opposition rival fans are going to be a little bit confused by this. So sometimes Plymouth fans will be switching on and maybe switching off. But I also think Ryan Hardy deserves a massive mention. Although I've said this publicly that he was quite quiet at Fratton Park, and I think he was taken off about the hour mark. But for him to come on in the Devon Derby and have the impact that he did and get on the score sheet almost within minutes, really, it's just fantastic. And he is one of the main reasons why Plymouth can turn the games on their head, as we discussed at length earlier on in the episode. So yeah, I think he deserves another big mansion. He's probably got a big mansion already.
Probably has,
he probably deserves another mention. And then Barry Bannon's numbers and stats speak for himself. But yeah, the quality of that bloke is mesmerising. And I'm very surprised he's actually in League One this season. And I think he is going to do big things with Sheffield Wednesday this season. They almost did it last season, and I think it's pretty much nailed on for this year.
I know we didn't speak about this before as well, but I think it's a fairly. I'll give my answer as well. I want to sort of do something where we maybe show. I want to sort of look back on this maybe when we do another one in a month's time. Do you think Plymouth will be in a similar position when we speak about it in a month? Do you reckon the position and the run they're on now does see them continue where they are? Same with Ipswich and things like that. Do you expect that Soxers to be the same? Maybe some teams outside there at the moment could creep in. What do you expect in the next month?
I said this to Ben on one of his shows a couple of weeks ago. I think it was last week that we spoke through Plymouth. And I'm always very sort of future looking and forward thinking about these things. And you do tend to kind of look at teams around you and think, oh, what's their run of form like? And I honestly think Plymouth could run away with the league by Christmas, if I'm honest with you, Jack. I really do. You look at their teams, and again, this is total respect to every single team I'm about to mention, but they're away to Lincoln, then they're away to Burton Albion, then Port Vale at home, Cambridge away, Morecambe at home, Cheltenham away, and Wycombe at home is their last game of this calendar year on the 29th of December. Now, that screams to me that they could be really, really properly flying high. But then the flip side of that, and I know this kicks on into the next couple of months, but you look at their January, 14th of January, they go to Portman Road to play Ipswich. Then they welcome Derby on the 28th of January. Then they're off to Hillsborough on the 4th of February. And then they welcome us down to Home Park, Pompey on the 11th of February. So, they've then got a period where you would say, anyone in their right mind and with their League One hat on would say, yeah, they're going to at least drop a couple of points. But who knows? Maybe they'll press through all the easy games and then press through all the hard ones as well. Or maybe there'll be a massive capitulation on the easy games and they'll impress in the so-called challenging fixtures. I don't know where to stand with Plymouth. I think the only reason, and I mean this with total respect to Plymouth fans, because I know a lot of them will be upset at the amount that people are underestimating them, but you have recent relative footballing history to go on. The fact, I'm not going to use the B word, but the fact that they bowed out of the playoffs, there's another B word, but it's not the B word I was going to use, at the end of last season in quite dramatic style. Really, you think about how quickly they sort of plummeted from almost what was looking like a guaranteed playoff spot right at the tail end, and then they ended up not having one. That would be the only thing probably playing on Stephen Schumacher's mind, and it's probably in the back of, my mind as well, looking at things. But yeah, we'll see by Christmas. Have they got the longevity to go all the way this season and get in those playoffs, or keep at the top of the league and steal an automatic spot and claim it as theirs? Who knows? What do you think?
Yeah, I think there's a few talking points. I want to sort of briefly mention on Bolton, because I'm afraid we haven't really spoken about them, and they probably do deserve a bit of a chat. Currently sixth in the league, but they've been a little bit a little bit up and down, haven't they? They've sort of been quite inconsistent in the last month. And if we had an award for most inconsistent, I think Bolton would probably have a fair shout. They've beaten Accrington, they've beaten Burton, they've beaten have they beaten anyone else? They beat someone in the I'm trying to think what crossover is. Yeah, they beat Lincoln. That was right at the start of October. But other than that, then we went to their place the other weekend and we won 3-1 and looked really convincing there. And I speak to some Bolton fans quite regularly, and they sort of say it has been really up and down. They lost to Cheltenham, they lost to Forest Green, they got a draw 0-0 against Barnsley. It's been has been so inconsistent. That's the only way you can describe it. And unfortunately, inconsistency will not get you where you want to get to. I think Bolton are pretty fair in saying they want to be in that top 6 come the end of the season. That's the aim. And at the moment, their form and their dip in form, their up and down roller coaster of a month doesn't suggest that I think top 6 is a guarantee whatsoever. So I then look at sort of Charlton, Barnsley, and Derby. They're trying to creep into that top 6. Charlton been really, really impressive. And then they went and that, by the way, that 4-4 against Ipswich was absolutely mental. That was crazy, by the way. And that's game of the month. We should have done that. That is definitely game of the month. They lost at home to MK Dons as the time before that. And it's like, what is that all about? They've got Burton away in the next game. They've got Port Vale. They've got Cheltenham at home. And then they've got Morecambe. So they've got, I don't want to say it, but they've got games in which they'll be hoping to win. I wouldn't be surprised if we see Charlton, if Bolton continue that inconsistency, and maybe in Derby and Barnsley sort of also carry on where they're a little bit inconsistent as well. Charlton could potentially be in maybe not. It's hard, isn't it? I expect them to be in for a real shout. They're currently 5 points away. I wouldn't be surprised if
they'll be up there.
They'll be up there. I wouldn't be surprised if they're either in there or they're just a couple of points away from it, because they've got some big games coming up and some games they'll feel they should win. Derby and Barnsley, they'll be hoping to sort of climb back in there. Derby sort of still in sort of transition with the new manager and Paul Warne, trying to find out exactly what his best sort of team is and his best sort of formation as well. They've sort of been flirting with different systems. Barnsley as well started really quite strong really under Michael Duff. And as we mentioned earlier, they have been a little bit underwhelming. So that's going to be fascinating. Wycombe haven't had a great season really. Not a really Wycombe campaign, is it, triumphing the league? So they might have to turn it around. They might need to turn it around if they want to sort of continue in contention for a traditional League One Wycombe promotion push. Again, that could be a really big month for them. And then we look at the bottom end of the table. Hopefully Oxford can sort of climb their way out of the position that they're in. The last sort of 3 games against yourself, Bolton, and then Fleetwood, they've sort of been fairly similar. Moments of brilliance and then sort of bits of quite difficult football. And then I look at the relegation zone as well. Will MK Dons, next time we speak, be in that bottom 4? Will Ian Manning still be in a job when we next speak? That's fascinating. Same with Cheltenham and also, I mean, we spoke about Accrington as well. I think John Coleman's future is pretty much guaranteed with his time there. But Cheltenham also, they're not in the prettiest of places. So that's my sort of reflection on that, because I fear that we should talk about the other teams, even though we've got some big awards that we've spoken about across this month. Tom, it's been a pleasure to have you on. I think it will now be a regular thing. I certainly enjoy it. Hopefully you do as well, Tom, and hopefully people watching as well. Find something out of the episode, because I feel like we've learned something today. I feel like we have.
Oh, we have. Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks for having me, mate. Lovely to speak to you. I was just going to say, based on what you've just been saying, it just amplifies and highlights how competitive this league is when you can literally name 10 teams that look like they will be in and around there. And you look at Derby, you look at Charlton, you look at these teams, you look at, are Bolton going to continue on a little bit of a downward trajectory? What's going to happen to Pompey over the next couple of weeks? Are Ipswich and Plymouth going to be able to keep pace? There's so many questions, aren't there? So, very much enjoying it. Looking forward to next month. And, play up.
Yeah, we'll speak.
Play up League One.
We'll speak off camera. I'm sure we might even get an episode. We probably will get an episode in with you before we next speak. But the next reflection will be in about a month's time. And like you say, so much can change by then. Tom, it's been a pleasure to speak to you today. I've been Jack. That's been Tom. And we'll speak very soon. Take care.